pleasure to have Professor Yaron Nilli here with us. He's professor at the University of Wisconsin, and he's here at our Global Law program to teach shareholder activism. We are so glad to have you here. Thank you very much. So one first question is about shareholder activism. What does it mean in a few words, please?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's really been fun to spend some time in Sao Paulo and get to know your students at FGV. So shareholder activism really talks about this phenomenon of the involvement of shareholders in the governance of corporations. So traditionally, very much in the United States, but also in other countries, shareholders have relatively been passive and not really engaged with the way the corporations were run, and management or a controlling shareholder would do largely what they wanted. And in recent years, we see more and more shareholders trying to get involved and influence corporations. So we have hedge fund activists who try to influence companies to change the way they operate, Elliott Management, Third Point, all of those big hedge funds. But we also have pension funds, mutual funds that are becoming more involved on social responsibility issues, on diversity. And we have individual retail investors who put shareholder proposals to corporations, trying to change some of the mechanics or governance regimes that those companies have.
Thank you. So what's the connection between shareholder activism and development? Do you think it's something good or bad for development?
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of a debate, I think, between people who are proponents of shareholder activism and think that that is a process to improve companies. So what I tell my students is if management is left unchecked, they can just do whatever they want. They might promote their own self-interest, they might be too lax, they might not try to do as good as they want, or they might not care about society as a whole. Shareholders, if they try to influence companies to do better, they can improve the way companies behave, and in that sense, they can improve the development of the economy overall, and obviously, they might care about stuff that are related to social distribution and how countries that have big disparities between different classes are able to smooth that over.
Mm-hmm. Could you say what is the best practice on regulation of shareholder activism?
So in the United States, it's traditionally those issues, or I guess we can divide it into two things. If we talk about activist hedge funds, those relatively were unregulated and still very much so, although there are some disclosure requirements that are now facing after the financial crisis. Dodd-Frank brought about some regulatory intervention on that, but mostly their ability to interfere with companies has remained unregulated, and the free market kind of operates in that sphere. When we talk about shareholder proposals, when I say shareholder proposals in the United States, shareholders can submit proposals to the annual meeting where they're going to be voted upon, and that can be done at the expense of the company as long as the shareholder holds specific amount of shares in the company for a specific amount of time. So again, that issue is relatively more regulated, and even recently we see in the United States an effort to restrict it a little bit more. So there is calls right now to kind of make it harder for shareholders to bring shareholder proposals. I believe this is a bad idea, but there's a healthy debate about this topic in the United States. Yeah.
Right. So, and talking about your research agenda, so what are you tackling right now?
Yeah, so my research is really divided maybe into three big baskets. The first one is dealing with issues that are related to the board of directors. So I focus on boards of companies and look at their composition. Gender diversity is something that I've been reading a lot in the United States right now. Mm-hmm. It's a really hot topic of the place of women in the board and how we improve the number of women on the boards. California just passed a legislation that requires companies to have a specific amount of women on the board. So I have research on that. I have research on the independence of directors and some other related issues with board composition. Then I have research that deals with what I call shadow governance. That's something that I recently finished a project with my co-author Kathy Wang, and there we look at this set of documents that companies have that is more than the traditional focus on bylaws and charter of the corporation. So we look at other governing documents that the company have, from audit committee charter to other charters to guidelines to social responsibility policies, and we're trying to figure out what is the place of the impact that those documents have on the governance of corporations. So I think that's the second basket. And then the third basket is really deals with the issue of shareholder involvement, shareholder activism. So I have research on kind of the importance of shareholder voting and what shareholder voting does to efficient markets. I'm working now on a project called Gadflies, where we tackle this issue of individual shareholders submitting proposals to companies and the impact that has on corporate governance. So that's kind of like the third bucket of what I'm kind of focused on.
Wonderful. Do you think there is any kind of cause-consequence between shareholder activism and corruption?
Well, that's a good question. I think that's probably more a Brazilian issue than the United States. I think in the United States, those issues of corruption in the corporate context are not as prevalent, and even if they are, there's a lot of other mechanisms to kind of try to catch it. Although shareholders can bring derivative suits on behalf of corporations to try to, sue managers who are being corrupt or, breaching their duty to the corporation by taking assets from the corporation. So that's something that definitely shareholders can do in discipline management on that, and we see that to a large extent. I think in Brazil, with these issues of companies that are controlled by controlling shareholders, then the question how minority shareholders can try to prevent that corruption. I think that's one of the things I told my students this week is that the things that we're going to talk about during this class, I have a sense that in a few years Brazil is going to start to see more and more of those things, because our world is becoming more and more connected, and we see trends that were very strong in the United States starting to diffuse to other countries. We see it in Korea, we see it in Japan, and those are countries that traditionally also have this controlling structures scenario. So I think Brazil is really about to see more and more of those things.
All right. So talking about the experience in Brazil, how was your
It's been
experience
great.
in Brazil?
Todo bom. It was fun. The students are great. I really like the class, and they're really engaged and eager to learn. I was able to learn a little bit about Brazilian law from them, so I will tell them how things work in the United States, and I'll ask them how is it in Brazil to compare. Sao Paulo is an amazing city. I've never been here before, so it was nice to explore and see it around. And I was even able to go a little bit and see the Ilha Bela, so that was nice too. It's been great.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Yaron.
Thank you for having me.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.